I've worked in the hospital virtually my entire professional career. When white people have strokes, they're missing half their brain. When they're in dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever, when they're having severe mental health crises, it doesn't matter what type of health issue they're going through. They could be on their deathbed. Guess what they're going to remember? They'll forget everything else. Their pain will trump everything else. The second they see a black person walk into their room to care for them, immediate racism. Immediate hard R's are coming out. Immediate belligerent behavior towards that black person is coming out, or towards whatever non-white person is coming out. Why is that? It's because it's deep in the marrow, you guys. By the nature of the pre-installed programming that is racism within you, you guys are not good people, especially when you're in groups. Okay? All shade, all tea, all offense.
I give all praise and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Ha Rekakwadash. Double honors unto our apostle elders, which rule Great Millstone Wow, and Shalom to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, Wa Abba Babal. So as you just heard that Jake woman, and we say Jake because the sons of Jacob today are known as the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian of North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbeans, which we've been exiled out of the Holy Land because of our sin. And we are being caused to remember and to repent, all right? Which the majority of Jake are going to forsake the truth and try to cleave to their enemy. And it's because of the want of all things. But salvation comes through Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, and it's only for the Israelites. It's not for the other nations. So fuck the heathen, all right? Fuck the other nations. And this lady gave you an example of why you should have a actual hatred for these other nations, because they hate you, starting with the so-called white race. It says in Psalm 83, which the so-called white race, they're the devil the Bible speaks of. They're not white, they're red. They're the red devil, and they're the descendants of Esau, which Esau is the reincarnation of Cain. Cain murdered his brother Abel, and he lost the color of his skin, and this is why they are so-called white, when they're actually red, okay, because they're goddamn liars from birth. All right, it says in Psalm 83, verse 1, a song or psalm of Asaph, keep not thou silence, O Elohim, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O Elohim. So he's prophesying of the prophets prophesying in these last days. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They that hate thee is the so-called white race, the red devil the Bible speaks of. They are the serpent that was in the garden that deceived Eve. All right. They are Cain, who murdered his brother, all right, Abel, and hid his body just like Nolan Wiles, right? They hid his body and said, we don't know where he is. That's what Cain said about his brother Abel. He said, am I my brother's keeper? Right? So the so-called white race, they are the devil the Bible speaks of, and you're supposed to hate them. You're not supposed to care for them. You're not supposed to like them. You're not supposed to be friends with them. You're supposed to hate them with a great passion. All right? The Lord hates them. Romans 9, verse 13. As it is written, Jacob, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, have I loved, but Esau have I hated. The so-called white race, their forefather is Esau, Aishawa, wasted away. The name wasted away was given to him by Isaac, which called him this name because he was born red, lacking melanin in his skin. And it was a prophecy of the Lord destroying him. All right, he's going to be wasted away. All right, Verse 14, what shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with Yahweh or his son Yahweh Shai? Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Shai forbid. Because look at the hatred the so-called white man has for the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, which are the children of Israel. All right, they even crucified Yahweh's son, Yahweh Shai, as Roman Edomites. All right, the Greeks and Romans were so-called Caucasians. All right, now they call themselves so-called white Americans, so-called white Europeans, but they're the red devil the Bible speaks of, and the Lord hates them with a righteous hatred. All right, Malachi 1 verse 3, and I hated Esau and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness, which he's going to turn their kingdom, America, into a desert via nuclear missile using their allies and enemies. All right. Whereas Edom saith we are impoverished, which they lie to the world and say that they are impoverished when they are actually ruling the world. But we will return and build the desolate places. What did Trump say about Gaza? Nero 47 said that they're going to go in there and build that place up with casinos, right? Hotels and all that. It says, thus saith Yahweh of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. And they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom Yahweh had indignation forever. All right? So Yahweh hates these people. Yahweh Shai hates these people. And us Israelites, we're supposed to hate the so-called white race. All right? King David, all right, he hated the Edomites. Hate them that hate thee. Let's see if it pulls it up. Psalm 139, verse 21. Do not I hate them, O Yahweh, that hate thee, which the so-called white race hates Yahweh and his son Yahweh Shai. And that's why they lie and created a false religion like Christianity. And am not I grieved with those that rise up against thee, which is the so-called white race, which has the other nations confederate with against the Israelites, right? The other nations are with the Edomites. The UN is allies to America and the European Union, right? The other nations are confederate against the Israelite, all right? And the Edomite, the so-called white race, they hate the Israelite. Which that hate was put in them, all right, by the Lord Yahweh, and really we're supposed to hate them as well, all right. It says in Genesis 3, it says in verse 1, now the serpent, the so-called white race, the red devil today, was more subtle than any beast of the field, meaning he's cunning and doing wicked, which Yahweh's power had made. And he said unto the woman, which the woman is the weaker vessel, so she's easily deceived and given over to temptation. And he said unto the woman, yea, hath Elohim said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden, meaning every nation. And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. And that's how that Nolan Wells, thought about the so-called white race. He thought he could hang out with them and be friends with them and make marriages with them, and they see you friendly and be, friendly to you, see you as an equal, But what happened to him? He was murdered, left on an island called the Horn Island. And when those so-called friends came back, they denied even knowing the guy. They said, I don't know where he is. Am I my brother's keeper? Because they're the serpent. They're the devil. All right. You're not supposed to make friendships with them. You're not supposed to make marriages with them. You're not even supposed to even drink out of the same water fountain as them. All right. They're the devil the Bible speaks of. It says, and the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. For Elohim doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. All right, so they were deceived by the so-called white race, starting with Eve. All right, and who deceived Eve was the so-called white race, which was known as the serpent. And that's what you see today, is the Jake woman, so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian woman, which the Israelites been scattered throughout the world, which you got Israelites amongst all nations. And who deceives them? The so-called white race, the red devil the Bible speaks of. And they try to give that to the man, right, as something good. You know, going to college to get an education, getting a job, right, serving the so-called white man. But as you saw, Eve telling you that it's clear that the so-called white race, the red devils the Bible speaks of, are not good people. They're evil. They're the wicked. They're the devil in the Bible. All right. So when the Lord punished Adam, Eve, and the serpent, all right, the Lord put enmity, which means hatred, in between Esau and Jacob. All right. So it says in verse 13, and Yahweh's power said unto the woman, what is this that thou hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me, deceived the woman, and I did eat, which she believed in the lies, that you could have a career and be treated fairly. You don't need a man. All this bullshit that the so-called white race uses as propaganda. And Yahweh's Elohim said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. So the beast of the field is representing the nations, and the so-called white race is the lowest existence of mankind. All right. A freaking worm, like I say, a maggot eating shit water at the bottom of a trash can is better than a so-called white man, woman, or child. All right. They are trash. They are good for fucking nothing. Even Job said this, right? They're nothing. In fact, they should be chased off into a cave. All right. And it says, and really the Lord's going to make them extinct. All right. When Yahweh sends Yahweh Shai back, he's going to save us from the judgment of the great whore, the bitter whore, which is America, and is going to be destroyed by nuclear fire. It's going to lose World War III, and they are going to go into slavery under us for 1,000 years and then be made extinct, because there's nothing good about the so-called white race. All right, they're the devil. They lie, they murder, they steal. All right. It says, upon thy belly thou shalt go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. So they're the lowest existence of mankind, and they cause chaos wherever they go. That's how they survive, through chaos. That's why they have their motto, order out of chaos, and don't tread on me. And they're a serpent on their yellow flag, because they are the serpent that deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden, and really we're supposed to stomp them out. That's why we're enslaved under them, because we didn't put them to death when we should have. Now we're enslaved under them. All right? It says, and I will put enmity, hatred, between thee and the woman. Now let's go into the interlinear, which is going to give you the word, the definition for enmity. It says, ayab, ayaba, ayaba. So it says hatred. See, they hate us and we're supposed to hate them. That's Yahweh's desire. The Almighty's desire is that we hate them as He hates them. He loves Jacob and hates Esau. And that's why they look all fucked up, right? They're disgusting to look at. They're gross. They're fucking horrible people to be around. They're not good people. They don't cook good. They don't smell good. They don't look good. They're not friendly. They're thieves. They're liars. They're cheats. All right, all the way down to the littlest to the oldest. They're trash. All right, and we're supposed to hate them. All right. So once again, in verse 15 of Genesis 3, and I will put enmity, hatred, between thee and the woman, between Esau and Jacob, and between thy seed and her seed, which are the Israelites, are the sons of Jacob, and Esau, the forefather of the so-called white race. That's why there's so-called racism, right, between the so-called Caucasian and the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. Look at the Ice Cube program. Look at the Ice-T program, right? There's hatred between the so-called white race and the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indians, because we're two different people, though at one time our forefathers, Esau and Jacob, were twins. But Yahweh put that hatred in them, and it's so, like she said, in the marrow, that when they were being born through Isaac and Rebekah, she had twins, and they were fighting in her womb, because they're two different manners of people, two different nations. All right, and there's hatred in between the Edomite and the Israelite. All right. It says, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel, which we're at the end of this so-called white race. And when Jacob was born, he was born second, grabbing to the heel of Esau, which was a prophecy of the end of the so-called white race. All right. It says in Genesis 25 and verse 21, and Isaac entreated Yahweh. If you could understand, Isaac is Yahweh Shai in a different lifetime. Entreated Yahweh, the Heavenly Father is Yahweh, and Yahweh Shai is his son, the true Messiah, which the scriptures describe him as a so-called black man. It says, for his wife, because she was barren, and Yahweh was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived, and the sons struggled together within her. That's that enmity, the hatred for each other. And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? So why is it like this if the Lord is for me to have these children? And she went to inquire of Yahweh. So she went to the prophets. And Yahweh said unto her, two nations are in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. Esau and Jacob, the so-called white race, and the Israelites, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian. All right. One likes bloody meat, Esau, the so-called white race, and one likes their meat well done, Jacob, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian. That's an actual stereotype that you could look at in Google are like one being a soft voice, effeminate Esau, and a loud man like the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian. They have power in their voice. They have deep, loud voices. All right, Esau's like a cunning serpent, so he talks soft. It says his tongue is smooth as butter, but in his heart is war. All right, that's why the whole world is in war, because the so-called white race, the red devil, they were given the sword, the blessing of the sword. That's how they took the earth, is with violence, and that's how they're going to end. All right, their kingdom is going to suffer great violence. It says, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people. Jacob, the Israelite, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, is better in every way than the so-called white race. The so-called white race is trash. They're not strong. They don't work, good for nothing. You just had that lady, that Edomite that was working for Arby's, and she spit in the lady's sandwich and gave her herpes. That's a fact. You can look it up. I've shared it. Because they're good for nothing. They're not good for making sandwiches. They're not good for digging pits. They're not good for any service because they don't even look good. Why would you want that fucking monster around you? Right? They're trash. They're literally trash. That's why one day they're going to go extinct. All right? And the one people shall be stronger than the other people. I like to remind you of Jesse Owens, all right, that ran against the German super soldiers and won, because we're better every way. We're made better. We look better. We smell better. We love better. We're better at everything. That's why they use us for everything. Without us, they would not be able to survive. All right. The only reason why America is great is because of the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, which the so-called white race enslaved. All right. So it says, and the elders shall serve the younger. So this is a prophecy. The so-called white race, they're going into slavery under the Israelite. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb, Esau and Jacob. And the first came out red, because he's an Edomite. He was the reincarnation of Cain. Edom means red. All right. All over like an hairy garment. So it doesn't mean he was hairy, though you see Edomites being hairy. It says like an hairy garment, because they used to dye garments, all right, that they made out of hair red. All right, so they're saying he came out red like a dyed garment. While everybody else in the world were dark-skinned people, you had the so-called white race. Right? The first Edomite really was Cain, when he lost his color for murdering his brother Abel. But then when his people died, they came back through Isaac as a brother to Jacob, which his name was Esau, Aishawah, because he came out red. And it was a prophecy that he was the waster that was created to destroy. And they called his name Esau, Aishawah, wasted away, because he looked red. And after that came his brother out, Jacob, which was colored, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. Now I'm going to go down to the Apocrypha. And it is in 2nd Ezra 6. It says, and this is Esdras. He was in Babylon, and he was a scribe of Israel, and he was praying to the Lord pretty much, if we're the righteous, why do the wicked rule over us? All right. And he was talking about the not the Assyrian Babylonians, but I believe it was the Persian Babylonians, right? Because you had the Egyptians, And then these were the superpowers that ruled the Egyptians. Then when the Israelites came out of Egypt, we went into captivity. First the northern kingdom, then the southern kingdom under the Assyrian Babylonians. Then you had the Medes and then the Persians. And then when we came out from Babylon, the northern kingdom went on Assyrian ships to the western hemisphere of the world. That's why they're here in North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbeans. They came on Assyrian ships. And then the southern kingdom, when they came out of the Assyrian Babylonian captivity, which the northern kingdom and southern kingdom of Israel, they were in captivity in Babylon in two different times. They were in captivity together, like in Egypt or like America. We're all here in captivity together. The northern kingdom went in first, and then the southern kingdom. When the southern kingdom came out of the Babylonian captivity, they went back to Jerusalem. And this is why when the Messiah was there, you had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, which eventually were exiled out of that land because of the Roman Edomites that destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. And they fled throughout the world, and they were picked up in West Africa and put on slave ships by the Edomites and the other nations and brought to the east coast of America to serve hard bondage. All right. So it says in verse 8, and he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. So when Esau was the firstborn, Jacob came out after him holding on to his heel, showing the strength that Jacob had. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So we're living at the end of the so-called white race and their reign of terror. They rule the world in wickedness, and their kingdom is collapsing. All right? And it's going to end violently. Nuclear destruction. It's going to be turned into a nuclear lake of fire, and it's going to be done by their allies and enemies by the command of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, according to prophecy. And Jacob, the Israelite, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, you see us remembering ourselves, standing on our feet, calling upon our power, Yahweh and his son Yahushai through the Holy Spirit, because we're the kingdom that followeth. We're the ones that are next to rule. And we're being prepared to rule by being given this knowledge, this increase of knowledge from Yahweh and his son Yahushai through the Holy Spirit. And we're going to rule in righteousness forever. That's why there will be no room in the kingdom of heaven for the wicked. The so-called white race, they're going to go extinct after 1,000 years of slavery. For Esau, the so-called white race, the red devil the Bible speaks of, is the end of the world. So we're at the end of this way of life. And Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. That's why we're being caused to remember ourselves. Remember Yahweh. Remember Yahushai. Remember the ways of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, which he showed his judgments and statutes unto Israel, and he has not done so with any other nation. All right? So I just had an example of that. I had to go deal with some Edomites yesterday, and right away they gave me a racist comment, calling me out of my name, right? He said, hey, there's one for you, and he said, Juan, like trying to get me upset, calling me Juan, right? Making a racist comment towards me. And then the next guy, right, they're asking questions about my religious beliefs, and, I kept it to the minimum, but I told him, I'm loyal to the Bible. That's all I said. And this guy said, I'm a Christian too, but he's not loyal to the Bible because he ain't keeping what is right, right? He's promoting what is wrong. He had no beard, right? So he intentionally told me that he cuts his beard and all that and only keeps a mustache. So that shows you that he's a liar, even though he says that he's a Christian. You see? So these Edomites are liars. They're thieves. How did they get this land? They stole it. They murdered it for it. There's a movie called Little Big Man. All right? All right. This movie called Little Big Man. And it has Dustin Hoffman, which is a small hat counterfeit. And he's playing a Native American Indian, which they lie and make him a weak man. All right, which the natives were not weak. In fact, if you read the history, they said that you had to fear 12-year-old natives, which the Native American Indians are the tribe of Gad of the nation of Israel. And it goes into the story of Custard, which this is pretty much a big fucking lie. All right. And they make this guy, Dustin Hoffman, play like a degenerate of the tribe of Gad. All right. He's supposed to be a Native American Indian. He has like 4 or 5 wives, but they show Custard come in and slaughter him, which that is true. All right. And where I live, that's where Custard actually was. And he tried to slaughter the Indians, the Native American Indians, the tribe of Gad, but ended up being slaughtered because we are stronger and they are weaker. But they try to lie about the Israelite and try to make us look weak using their movie magic. All right, because they're the devil the Bible speaks of. All right. And this movie, I recommend you watch it to see the lies, you know, because they show you that that one, we had many women, all right, but then it shows you how Custer went in there and slaughtered all the Native American Indians. They shot the babies, they shot the women, they shot the men, all right, but it shows how they lie because they make Dustin Hoffman's character real fucking weak, all right, which in reality, the natives were terrible to these Edomites. I've read history books where they used to say, if you're 165 miles to an Indian, you're in danger, because the natives, they were fast. They could run 100 miles in one day. You know, they'd outrun horses. All right, they literally said they could outrun horses. They were stronger, and that's why Esau had to cause us to weaken ourselves, and as he does today, he weakens the nations. Right? And he gave them fire, water, and guns. That's how he weakens the nations. Look at what they were doing in Mexico with the Fast and Furious operation. They were given guns. Right? What are they doing in these ghettos? They put guns in there. They say there's crates of guns that are being dropped off in alleys to arm the gangs. Who taught the Israelites to murder each other in the colors red and blue, like the politics? Right? Your politicians are red and blue. So Esau, the so-called white race, the red devil the Bible speaks of, they're liars, they're murderers, they're thieves, and they're not stronger than us. That's why they need the gun. That's why they need to make laws to protect themselves from us. Because really, if we were to put our hands on them, we would be able to tear them limb from limb. All right, we would be able to tear them into pieces like a lion would do a piece of meat. So this is why they're very afraid of us. This is why they're coming down with great wrath, knowing that they have but a short time. All right. So I put it in. Little Big Man movie makes Indians look weak. It says while the 1970 film Little Big Man is widely celebrated as an early revisionist Western, which it's not accurate in a lot of points of history, that shifted away from depicting indigenous people, the tribe of Gad, as one-dimensional villains. It has drawn criticism for how it portrays the Cheyenne, Critics argue the film sometimes relies on stereotypes and flattens their culture to suit the director's satirical, let me get that word, it's like satire, goals. Satirical, criticizing people or ideas in a humorous way, especially in order to make a political point. So this is propaganda, all right? And as you saw, it was by the small hats. Dennis Hoffman is a small hat. I'm sorry, not Dennis Hoffman, Dustin Hoffman, which plays the main character, which is a Native American Indian, Dustin Hoffman. All right, which he's really a small hat. When you go into his, let me go into Wikipedia. We'll go into his early life. It says here, Hoffman was named after stage and silent screen actor Dustin Farnham. He has an elder brother, Ronald, who is a lawyer and economist. Hoffman is a counterfeit, a small hat, from an Ashkenazi counterfeit family of immigrants from Kiev, Russian Empire, which they're the Red Army. Look up the Red Army. All right, the Edomites in Ukraine, those are counterfeits. They're of the Red Army, which go back to the small hats that are in the Holy Land today. They wear the little hat on top of their head. Those are counterfeits. They're not the real Jew. Okay? So it shows you that there's hatred in between Esau and Jacob. And who put it there? Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai. All right? And Yahweh is going to send Yahushai to show his hatred for Esau. All right? Which we're living in that time. That's why their shame is being revealed, because Yahweh hates them. And he promised before he sent Yahushai to destroy them that he would reveal them. So it says in 2 Ezra 6 verse 10, it says, the hand of man is betwixt the hill and the hand. Other question, Ezra, asked thou not. So we're in the transition of power from Esau to Jacob. The so-called white race has been in power, and that's why the world is in the wicked state it is in. And soon the Israelites will be ruling after Yahweh sends Yahushai. And Yahushai is coming to destroy the kingdom of Edom. Isaiah 63 and 1. Who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save, with Yahushai. He is the Savior of Israel. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat, which it says in Revelation 19. And 11, as you see, Esau knows this is the coming of the Messiah. And I saw heaven open, which this is why Esau created a space force because they know Yahweh Shai is coming from heaven, from the Father Yahweh, with the host of heaven to fight the devil and his angels, the so-called white race and their military. And this is also why they're building bunkers. And behold, a white horse, a chariot, a so-called UFO, so you could understand. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. Yahweh Shai, he's coming to do the will of the Father, which is to slaughter the Edomite. And in righteousness he does judge and make war, which he's going to judge them according to the law, because they claim to be Christian, they claim to be a Jew, and are not. And in righteousness he does judge and make war, which he's going to make war with Amalek. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, which he's going to have the victory, and it's going to be a slaughter. All right, it's not going to be like a war that continues for many years. It's going to be a slaughter, 1 day, 1 hour. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. So no man knows the glory he's coming with, because the world never experienced such an event. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahweh, which he's going to slaughter these Edomites, all right? And we tell you about it. We're here to actually prophesy unto our people, but also tell the other nations. He's going to slaughter the Edomites and the other nations which are confederate against his people, the Israelites, all right? So it says in verse 4 of Isaiah 63, for the day of vengeance is in mine heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. And this is why we're being stirred up to remember Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai and reveal who are the Israelites and who are the Edomites, because this is the idea of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai. All right, and he's going to destroy these Edomites and enslave the ones that remain in their bunkers outside of America. America is going to be destroyed, all right, at the return of Yahweh Shai. Let's see, Ezekiel. Ezekiel 35. It says in verse 1, moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir. Mount Seir pertaining to the so-called white race, and prophesy against it, which their kingdom is Babylon, America, the whore that rides the beast. The beast is the European Union, which together they have NATO. And say unto it, thus saith Yahweh's power, behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. They're going to be made extinct. It's going to be as though they had never been. I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am Yahweh. This is why he has raised up the prophets before he sends Yahweh Shai to lay their cities waste, right? Which is going to be destroyed by nuclear fire. That's why the nuclear missile was given to Edom. All right, he's going to sweep it from the earth. Isaiah 13. And verse 17, it says, behold, I will stir up the Medes, which are the Russians today, against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. This is why they're going crypto. Their bows also shall dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb, because of the nuclear missile. Their eyes shall not spare children. You're going to see men, women, and children be destroyed with nuclear fire here in America. And it's going to be the Russians, which you have the BRIC nations, the enemy of this whore, and its allies, the European Union, which they have NATO, and their allies, the UN, which are going to shoot nuclear missiles from every direction onto this great whore. All right? It says, and Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when Yahweh, through Yahweh Shai, which Yahweh does everything through Yahweh Shai, overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember, when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, Yahweh Shai came to Abram and promised him a son, Isaac, which later Isaac was born, which was Yahweh Shai. But before he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, he sent angels to prophesy to Lot and bring him out of that land before it was destroyed, preserving the righteous Lot. All right. And his wife, when you look it up, his wife, she turned back to look back at her people being destroyed, and she was destroyed with them. She was not of the same bloodline as Lot. All right. She was of another race. For salvation is only for the Israelites. Lot's daughters were preserved because they were of his bloodline. All right. So this is not so much color, because Israelites aren't anymore just dark-skinned people. We look like even so-called Caucasians. You got Israelites that look like Dustin Hoffman. All right. It's about a bloodline. Salvation is only for the Israelites, and the Israelites that are going to be saved from the nuclear destruction, they're repenting, returning to Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, and worshiping him as an Israelite. All right, we are Israelites, and that is who pertaineth the adoption. Romans 9, verse 4. This is Apostle Paul's letter to the Israelites in Rome. Who are Israelites? To whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the giving and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of our power and the promises, whose are the fathers, it was given to the sons of Jacob, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, Hamashiach came. He came as an Israelite. He didn't come as an Edomite. He didn't come as an Hamite. He didn't come as an Ishmaelite. He didn't come as a Moabite, an Ammonite. He came as an Israelite. Salvation is only for the Israelite, who is over all. Yahweh blessed Yahweh Shai forever. Amen. So let it be. So be it. All right. But I wanted to show you right here, in between the word Israelites and the word to, you got this pronunciation mark. All right. And it says the purpose of this mark is it's a semicolon, connects two closely related independent clauses, complete sentences. It shows they belong together without needing a comma and a conjunction like and or but. See? So that's what it means. Who are Israelites? To whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of our power and the promises. Once again, another semicolon. Whose are the fathers? It was given to Jacob and given to the Israelites. It wasn't given to the Edomites. The Edomites are rejected. That's why they're such hateful people, because they are rejected. All right. The Lord hates them. All right. And they hate the Lord. That's why they hate the Israelite, the sons of the Yahweh, the princes of the power, which were adopted in through Yahweh Shai. Ecclesiasticus 44:1. It says, let's go down to verse 22. It says, with Isaac did he establish likewise for Abraham his father's sake the blessing of all men and the covenant, and made it rest upon the head of Jacob. Esau is rejected. The blessing is to Jacob. And that's why Esau hates us, because we're better every way in this dimension and others than the Edomite. The so-called white race, they are nothing. The heathen are nothing, and Esau is the bottom of the barrel. It says, he acknowledged him in his blessing and gave him an heritage, which the Holy Land is ours, but we're exiled in slavery because we sinned. But Yahweh is going to send Yahushai to put us back in that land. Isaiah 14. It says, and divided his portions among the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes of Israel did he part them. And when you go on, it speaks about the Israelites. All right. And as it said in Ecclesiasticus 44 verse 1, let us now praise famous men and our fathers that begot us, the Israelites, the sons of Jacob. See, because the promise is for the Israelite. It's not for any other nation, especially not for the Edomite. The Edomite is going to be made extinct. All right. Isaiah 14 and 1. For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob, and we have this ministry of the truth. This is our mercy, and will yet choose Israel, which he shows his judgments and statutes to Israel. He gave us the truth. Yahushua is the truth, and set them in their own land, which he's going to put us in our land after he saves us. And the strangers, the Israelites that have been scattered throughout the world, shall be joined with them through the unicorn, the internet, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. They're going to believe on Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai through the spirit of prophecy. All right. Now I'm going to jump down to the judgment of Esau. Verse 21, prepare slaughter. When you understand that word prepare, it means to tell them what's going to happen to them. Prepare them for the slaughter. That word there is kawant.
Strong's H3559. Kun.
But it's kawan. To firm, be stable, be established. See, so we're telling you your future. All right? To be directed, which we're telling you what's going to happen to you. To prepare. See, we're preparing you for what's going to happen. It says, prepare slaughter for his sons, which are the Edomites, the so-called white race that hate the Israelites, for the iniquity of their fathers. What did they do to us? Why do they have a movie called Little Big Man of Custer slaughtering Native American Indians, the tribe of Gad, which that's a prophecy that they would overcome Gad, but Gad would overcome in the end. Genesis 49 verse 1, and Jacob called unto his sons, the Israelites, and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Now it says, verse 18, I have waited for thy salvation, O Yahweh. Gad, the North American Indians, a troop shall overcome him, which Custer was part of the American troops that overcame Gad and took the land with violence. But he shall overcome at the last, which we're going to have the Edomite, the so-called white race, as slaves. And it was even shown in the battle of where Custer lost his life by the Native American Indians because we were stronger, we're better. That's why they had to develop a Gatling gun. All right, because the Israelites are very much stronger than the Edomite in every way. Even here where I live, all right, the battle with Custer and the natives started here because of the Sand Creek Massacre that took place in Colorado, and the natives started slaughtering the Edomites. And the Edomites could not fight the natives as well as the natives, the tribe of Gad, was able to slaughter them. And they couldn't catch him, the ones that were slaughtering the natives. So they called in Custard to because he was known as a Indian killer, and eventually he was slaughtered by the Native American Indians. All right, and he was a foolish man. When you go into the history, they said he was a hothead, a fool. All right, just like you see Nero 47 running into the slaughter right now with the Carmanians, the Iranians, which are the ancient Persians, and it's prophesied in 2nd Ezra 15 that they're going to come out like wild boars against the Assyrians, talking about these American Babylonians, all right, because the whole world is going to shoot nuclear missiles on America and turn it into a lake of fire and eat the flesh. The people of America, they're going to be in the lake of fire burning. All right? Why? Because Yahweh's going to slaughter them through his son returning and putting it in their heart to destroy this whore and avenging the Israelites. Isaiah 14 verse 21, prepare slaughter for his sons, for the iniquity of their fathers, because you are your forefathers, reincarnation, that they do not rise nor possess the land nor fill the face of the world with cities. Look what you've done to the world. Look what you've done to the people. All right, nothing good has ever came out of the so-called white race. They're trash. They're wicked. They're violent. They're thieves. They're liars. They murder. For I will rise up against them, saith Yahweh of hosts, and cut off from Babylon, America, the name and remnant and son and nephew, saith Yahweh. I will also make it a possession for the bittern and pools of water, because it's going to become a desert after nuclear destruction, and I will sweep it with the besom of destruction, saith Yahweh of hosts. He's going to wipe America off the map through nuclear missiles being shot by its allies and enemies. And it's going to be turned into a lake of fire, and it's going to burn for a very long time, smoke for a long time, and then it's going to be a desert, and desert creatures will dwell here, but no man will ever live here. And the Edomites are going to go into slavery, and then they're going to go into extinction. Revelation 13:9. It says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints, which we're waiting on Yahweh to send Yahushai. Shalom to the elect of the nation of Israel. Wa abba babam.